My number three is Sense and Sensibility from 1995, directed by Ang Lee, written by Emma Thompson, and an adaptation of a Jane Austen novel, obviously, starring Emma Thompson, Kate Winslet, Alan Rickman, Hugh Grant, a whole bunch of folks. A quick logline: rich Mr. Dashwood dies, leaving his second wife and her three daughters poor by the rules of inheritance. The two eldest daughters are the title's opposites. What? This is the logline? Okay, sure.
The title's opposites. Oh, like the
Yeah,
sense
Sense
and
and
sensibility. They
Sensibility.
represent each of the. Oh, someone's getting really clever on that little
Yeah,
plot
this is
summary
not the
there.
best
Trying
logline.
trying to write their thesis or something.
But this is obviously a classic, and I think most people are aware of the story because it's a famous Jane Austen novel. I didn't grow up watching or even reading, for that matter, any Jane Austen stuff, but I think this is probably the first adaptation of hers that I actually watched. But for me, this is on the list for joy, is because of, I think I've shared this on the podcast before. English countrysides and such bring me a lot of joy. They make me really happy. So there's that aspect to it. And then I think the credit goes to the performances, the direction, and Emma Thompson's writing, that we've typically known period drama, especially set in the English world, to be stuffy and stodgy, or they can be, versus this movie just has so much of like sense of fun and joy and romp
Hmm.
to it, that this story, the way the story is timeless. There's a reason why Jane Austen is Jane Austen, but its rendition in this movie is just so timeless that you can imagine yourself in it, no matter what age, what time period you might be watching this movie, and it sort of transcends. So I think that's why, like, there's so much fun and joy in this movie in terms of coming of age and sibling relationships, and the mockery of the class system and the weird rules that come with it. Like, all of that brings me a lot of joy, and you get to see beautiful English countryside, which brings me a lot of joy. So yeah, that's why this is on my list. Great performances, and of course we'll dive into it. But had you watched this movie, and if so, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I had it, but not in so long, and I was so young.
Yeah.
It was like a movie probably my sisters and mom were watching at one point. Like
Mm,
I remembered seeing the broad strokes of it, but hadn't actually
mm,
sat down as an adult and watched it. And it's very joyous and just such an amazing adaptation of this book. And a lot of credit is due to Ang Lee and due to Emma Thompson. And it really did kickstart, that whole Jane Austen craze in the 90s. And I
mm-hmm.
think just paying attention now to the direction and the different choices Ang Lee made in this is just amazing. Honestly, like the craft of this movie and how he brought in modern, camera movements, editing. There's like little zooms. He's editing back and forth between people during comedy beats. There's
Yeah.
handheld camera use at several times in this, which I know you love Merchant Ivory. I'm not trying to slag them off
Yeah.
or anything like that, but the Merchant Ivory style is very like, locked in cameras,
Yeah.
very, very
Very classic.
simple, classic direction.
Yeah.
And we did cover A Room with a View a while back for the
Hmm.
travel destination episode. And I remember commenting and thinking too that movie felt very modern in its performances and in its dialogue a little bit, mainly in the performances, but the direction was not modern at all. And I think when
Yeah.
Ang Lee sort of takes that baton and says, okay, well, now we're going to have, yes, more of modern acting styles and more, colorful characters, but I'm going to bring it into the direction and make this basically feel like this is a modern film set in, the whatever the 17 1800s.
Right.
And just
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just so in awe of that, how he was able to make the film seem modern and fresh just through these directing choices. And it felt like this could have been a contemporary, comedy,
Yeah.
but
Could be
but
anywhere,
what it wasn't.
anytime.
Yeah.
And performances too, like there are all these amazing making of videos of this movie, and the actors talking about how Ang Lee would show up and say to Emma, "Don't look so old," or to Kate Winslet, like, you seem boring and what have you. Because and at the beginning they found these comments and these direction notes to be a little bit startling, because these are
Mm-hmm.
all like English actors, and here's this sort of foreign gentleman dealing with almost that's Jane Austen, which is sort of so classic British. And but I think it was all by design, because the makers of the movie wanted this kind of fresh take on it. And what Ang Lee was trying to do was to not make this, again, not to throw Merchant Ivory movies under the bus, because I love them. He was not trying to make that. He wanted
Right.
these people
Right.
to live and breathe as if they were from today. And
Mm-hmm.
that comes through, and the performances are amazing. The story is, a classic story, right? Of people coming of age, understanding the value of love and what love even means. But all this is happening within the class structure.
Mm-hmm.
How does money move? How does inheritance move? What sort of agency do women have in this time period? And all of these themes are still very resonant. But I think, to me, the most resonant theme of the movie is that of kind of finding love and what love means. And you
Mm-hmm.
really see, as the title says, Sense and Sensibility. In Kate Winslet's mind, love is all about this, knight in shining armor, somebody who writes poetry, is this, dreamboat guy who actually does show up, who
Yeah.
Greg, played by Greg Wise, who's
Yes.
actually Emma Thompson's real life husband. So that's kind of a fun thing there. But those scenes are absolutely hilarious and funny and joyous. How the entire family is like fawning all over him, only to find out later that, what meets the eye may not be
Right. He's a
the right
fraud,
thing.
basically.
He's a
Yeah.
fraud.
Well, not fraud, but he's lying about a lot of things about
He's
his
lying a lot
past.
of things
Right.
in the
Right.
past, and he's sort of a
Leading her
weak
on.
character. This whole
Yes.
thing is kind of a put up. I wouldn't call him like, and that's the clever thing about Jane Austen's writing, is that people are never black and white. They're
Yeah.
all
Yeah. Yeah.
gray.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is flawed in there. Even our heroines are flawed in this movie as well. Like Kate Winslet is like, very impulsive, would drop off at the beat of her, of anything really. On the other hand, Emma Thompson's character, who's trying to keep the family together, is playing sort of the older, maturer one in the family
Yeah.
now
She's
that
got the
their father
sense.
isn't there, and she's
She's
got
the
the
sense.
sense.
She's got that
Exactly.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the sixth sense. That's another film, but
She's very much trapped in that, and is not sort of fighting for her own life and her own love and desires, and that's not great either. I love her and Hugh Grant, and a young Hugh Grant's chemistry. Like, we've covered Hugh Grant in a Hugh Grant
yes.
episode previously, and this is sort of, I guess, the beginning of what Hugh Grant ends up playing a lot in the 90s, a little bit. But it's love to see that in the context of this movie, this time period just fits so perfectly. So yeah, this is just such a fun movie. The side characters are great. The older lady and the husband, whose cottage these three or four girls and their mom go and live with, they're super fun and funny. Even the quote unquote negative characters are also kind of a fun romp.
Yeah. The
So
stepmother
the stepmother,
is,
and
yeah.
yeah, again, they're played kind of for laughs, but at the same time they're not cartoony. It's such
Right.
a
Right.
thin line, right? Because you have to believe into all of this, otherwise you wouldn't care, like
Mm-hmm.
the stakes wouldn't matter. And they do matter. They are laugh out loud moments, but you also weep a lot. At least I do in certain scenes as this movie progresses. So yeah, it's a great all-round package, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's a credit to both Emma Thompson and Ang Lee.
Yeah.
I mean, having a an outsider, someone who's not part of British culture, come in as the director, I think
Yeah.
adds that energy of pushing something that was different and not just going after the Merchant Ivory formula in terms of how this movie would be constructed. And I think Emma Thompson also was trying to breathe some modern life into these characters to make them more relatable to a
Yeah.
90s audience. And I think she succeeds there too. So it's definitely a credit to both of them. And I think in terms of joy too, I mean, the thing you can read into this movie as well is around love, and that Emma Thompson's character, she got the love that she wanted in Hugh Grant's character by just being patient, or not trying to
Mhm.
go after it too much. And then Kate Winslet obviously falls for this guy, and maybe it wasn't really love in the beginning. It was more just
No.
infatuation with this perfect prince who could save her. She's fallen down in the rain, and he comes right at the right time, and it's almost like too perfect. And it
Yeah.
wasn't really ever love, even though maybe he did love her, and I believe he probably did, but he didn't choose that. He chose to be he took the cowardly way out and went with someone who he would be able to get the finances from because he was broke. And there's a
Yeah.
scene at the end where he kind of goes to the Kate Winslet's wedding and is like, "Oh crap! Like I made the wrong choice." Like he's
Yeah.
not happy, but everyone else in the end of that movie is happy. Like the main characters, because they chose love and not money, which is a theme definitely of this movie, is those two things, and how in that society sometimes you have to just choose money because that's just a lot that you're given, but that doesn't give you joy.
No, exactly. And Jane Austen there's no better writer than playing with how money and class and your position in society kind of
Yeah.
weaves through, your moral character, your relationships, what actually matters, right? She's always playing with the tension between them. We haven't mentioned Alan Rickman, by the way, who also is absolutely amazing in this movie. I know a lot of people sort of feel like this is odd casting because he's much older, and is that a good match for Kate Winslet and so, but I don't know. I like this pairing quite a bit, I think.
I still don't get it. I mean, I love Alan
Yeah.
Rickman,
Yeah.
but I'm like this. I don't understand why she ended up going
It
with him at
feels
the end.
period
Honestly,
appropriate, I suppose.
sure. No, that feels. And I've never read the novel. I've not read any of Jane Austen's. I've only seen the film adaptation, so I don't know what the ages were in the book. Though I'd imagine that was probably accurate because that time, giant age gaps between men and women were something that
And
was
also
more
people
normal.
looked older. You look at all the
True.
movies from the 30s and 40s, people who are in their 40s, or people who look like they're in their 50s, they turn out to be there in their 20s.
Yeah.
This happens a lot.
Yeah, all the smoke and the scotch, I think,
Exactly.
ages you.
But I'm glad you finally got a chance to sit down with this movie and
As an adult.
watch it.
Yeah. It's great. And just again, shout out to Ang Lee, just how he can adapt all these different genres. He's just definitely a great filmmaker. We should do an Ang Lee episode at some point, I feel like, just covering his career. It's a very interesting one.
Agreed.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.